Welcome to Luke 21 Radio, a broadcast explaining biblical prophecy in the tradition of St. Augustine. And now, from Greenville, South Carolina, here's your host, Steve Wood.
Hello, this is Steve Wood, and welcome to Faith and Family Bible Studies, and also welcome to Studying Biblical Prophecy with Luke 21. Now, what gives? Well, this is a special combo podcast for both our Faith and Family Studying the Bible listeners as well as our Luke 21 listeners, because we're in special times. I'm dedicating this episode as a welcome to friends of Charlie Kirk. And why is this special welcome? Well, in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination, a large number of young adults are turning to God, returning to the church, and seeking truth from the Bible. And if you're one of Charlie Kirk's friends, then welcome, and we greet you wholeheartedly. I want to just back up a little bit in a sense that my radar picked up something back last spring, and I wrote in my March 2025 newsletter that there were some encouraging stirrings afoot. Here's one. A large Bible publisher reported that Bible sales surged 30% from the past year, especially among younger demographics. I read the story of one young man just walked into a Christian Bible store, Christian bookstore, and said, I need a Bible. I want to meet Jesus. And they haven't been having customers like this in a while. Here's one from the American Bible Society, found that 54% of Gen Z young adults, that's those born between 97 and the year 2021, said that the message of the Bible has transformed their lives. And here's one. The Wall Street Journal reports that Bible sales are booming, fueled by first-time buyers. Now, something that caught my attention is that I had launched this Bible prophecy podcast called Luke 21. And I had been broadcasting and podcasting for, I don't know how many years, about 25 years. But one thing I noticed is that young men were listening to that broadcast, that podcast, much higher degree of young men than anything that I had done in the previous quarter century. And I thought, well, maybe it's because the topic of biblical prophecy. And I do think there's something about that, a sane approach to studying biblical prophecy. The other thing, I know that men like to get right to the point, and maybe the shorter, more to the point format of Luke 21 cause more male listeners, but I still wasn't sure. And this is what I wrote last March, 7 months ago. I now suspect that a significant reason for the increase in younger male listenership is that we are on the front end of a major cultural change. Now, for me, I had spent a large amount of effort doing all I could, traveling all over North America and sometimes even further than that, trying to reach Catholic men and other Christian men to follow Jesus more closely and to be the responsible heads of their family. And the fact that young men who many, in fact, that was the title of my newsletter last March, is like, we don't even try. And I told the story of one of the most popular Christian radio stations in the country reaching all these people. They were the number one station in their region, out doing everything from rock stations to news stations. And I congratulated them. And then I asked, what about young men? How are you doing with them? And the representative told me, we don't even try. They're impossible to reach. And they were listening to Luke 21. I was trying to figure out what happened. What I saw last March, I believe, was a beginning of a small river composed of a generation seeking to return to God. And Charlie Kirk's organization was called Turning Point Ministries. And here, this is what I think is happening. The martyrdom of Charlie Kirk was the turning point that transformed the small river of a modest current, that is, a current returning to God, that is now overflowing its banks and turning into a flood. And why do I say the martyrdom of Charlie Kirk rather than the assassination or the murder? It was an assassination, it was a murder. But Charlie Kirk was known as a conservative Christian political activist. But politics aside, I think something more fundamental and more powerful and more culturally life-changing and transformative is taking place, and that's not the political aspect. I believe young people are feeling either consciously or unconsciously that the martyrdom of Charlie Kirk was almost like the final straw in an attempt to sever their generation from God. If you think everything they've grown up with, a culture that used to have a respectful Judeo-Christian outlook, turning secular, the sexual revolution normalized, all of the media, all the music, and the social media does everything possible to pull them away from God. And it's down to a few threads. And they're seeing the martyrdom of Charlie Kirk as just like, let's sever it. This is it. Let's just cut it off, and then we're done with that. And you know what? The young people aren't buying that. They've had enough. They have had enough. At least I am seeing this is a major turning point. They've had enough of what my generation has given to them and their parents. They're not buying it. I believe that we are in the first steps of what a religious historian would call a great awakening. And it was triggered by Charlie's martyrdom. And I'm saying all this as one who can say, I've seen all this before. I have seen all this before in the Jesus movement of the 1970s. I don't think I read it, but the Time magazine cover of April 8th, 1966 was entitled, Is God Dead? And not only the atheistic philosophers, but in a culture and with the sexual revolution starting, mainline Protestantism declining, is God dead? It's kind of like, is that it for Christianity in our culture? And the answer to that question came in the form of the Time magazine cover of June 21st, 1971. And the title of that was The Jesus Revolution. And it was highlighting what was going on in Southern California, particularly in a church called Calvary Chapel, which is now made into a 2023 movie by the same title. And just so you know, I was in the Navy at the time. I had had a rather dynamic conversion experience, but I had really no idea exactly what happened. I certainly didn't have any theological framework or terminology to put to it, but I was working away in an office, and a friend, by the way, when you're on a ship, everybody knows your business. Whatever your business is, everybody knows your business. And a ship with 300-400 men, they knew that, Wood was into Jesus, but I was kind of a freak. I guess I was a Jesus freak before there were Jesus freaks. And a friend came to my office and held that Time magazine up at the door of my office and said, "Hey, Wood, look at this." And it was the Jesus Revolution. My jaw dropped. And he took off running. I chased him all around the ship. He was teasing me. I was, trying to get a hold of it, and looked in those pages of what was going on out in Southern California. And let me tell you, the movie I would recommend seeing, because I think we need to broaden our appreciation for what Charlie Kirk's martyrdom has triggered. It is a turning point. And you watch that movie, the Jesus Revolution, it's missing one central ingredient to what was going on in Calvary Chapel. They didn't quite mention it, but there were very understandable Bible studies 6 nights a week with practical application to your life. And in case you're wondering, my 2 Catholic Bible podcasts are a direct fruit of the Jesus movement. That's what I was given. Now, what I've tried to do is give also the important addition of the theological perspective of historic Christianity. There were things learned by 20 centuries before the Jesus Revolution. So I'm trying to put together understandable Bible studies with the historic Christianity. And now what I'm seeing is that the young people are searching for God. And I'd just like to welcome the friends of Charlie Kirk to our website for these two Bible podcasts, BibleForCatholics.com. And you can learn about that. There's all kinds of Bible learning resources. And by the way, we do have a paywall for some of our content, and that's to keep the search engines out. I want them out. I want the freedom to say anything. So it costs you $1 to get in. And if you're a friend of Charlie Kirk's and you think, well, this might be some kind of religious con job and you're hesitant to pay $1, I will personally pay your $1 to get past the paywall to get all of the Bible content because it is for you. Now, the Bible is a big book. I just heard in a special service in honoring Charlie Kirk that Robert Kennedy spoke, and he talked about his niece was packing for college, and they noticed she put a Bible in her suitcase, and they asked her, "What's up?" And she said, "I want to be like Charlie Kirk." See, it's more than political activism. This is a trigger to bring a generation back to God. And how do you do that? The Bible's a big book. Putting it in your suitcase is a good start, but where do you start? When I was in the Navy and I was a long way from God and trying to find my way back, the Gospel of John helped me in a powerful way to connect with Jesus Christ. I would highly recommend the Gospel of John. It's about 7/8 through the Bible, towards the back of the Bible, and that's the place to start. In case you even want a quick start for your study in the Gospel of John, the Faith and Family Bible Study episodes of the 7 I am sayings of Jesus. Jesus identifies himself 7 times in the Gospel of John, saying, I am the light of the world. I am the bread of life. I am the good shepherd. And we have episodes 500 to 513 will take you through those 7 I am sayings, and they're only 15-minute episodes. It's a quick start for understanding the Gospel of John. To all the other of you folks listening to this podcast, please pass along a link to the friends of Charlie Kirk who may be putting Bibles in their suitcases as they head off to their apartment life or their college life. This is critically important. We have a few moments in history when certain things happen that God uses to bring his wandering sheep back to himself. And you're talking about a generation. And I would particularly urge you to send a link to this welcome broadcast to a young person who thought was lost beyond recovery, because that's who Steve Wood was. A lot of my family and friends thought I was gone and off the deep end without recovery. And Jesus is able to recover a life, and not just recover, but bring a union with Christ that lives and thrives and transforms your life. And that's what a generation is seeking right now. So don't say, well, that person, is showing a lot of interest in the Bible the last few years. I mean, send a link to them. But be sure to send a link to somebody you think is beyond recovery, and watch God work. I'm Steve Wood, the host of both Faith and Family Bible Studies and Bible Prophecy with Luke 21. Visit us at BibleForCatholics.com.
Luke 21 is a radio outreach of Family Life Center International. To learn more about biblical prophecy, visit us online at Luke21.com.